The present active indicative tense handout will look like this. This corresponds to at least part of Mounce chapter 16. Okay. So the tense we're talking about is the present active indicative. So when we see present active indicative, present means that the action is in some way contemporaneous with the speaker's utterance of it. Okay? Active means that the subject performs the action. Okay? And indicative is the mood. Tense, voice, mood, TVM. The mood is the indicative mood. It's the mood of assertion or questions, for that matter. And this is going to be our opening foray into the Greek verbal system. Now, Greek, like many other languages, uses inflectional endings to indicate the subject of the verb. Okay? So let's make sure we know that word. I'm going to use it frequently. Inflection. An inflection is an affix, something that is added to a word in order to provide some grammatical information. In the case of verbs, inflectional endings will tell us who the subject is. Okay? So those are inflections. The word personal endings here on your handout then refers to a set of inflections that happen on the end of the verbal form to tell us who the doer of the action is. What I want to do is walk you through the chart here, and we're going to look at what happens in the Greek present tense. Now, in Greek, in the present active indicative, we are going to use the present stem. Okay? The present stem is a basic form of the verb to which we're going to add other things to build a verb form. The present stem. All right? And it's to the present stem that we're going to add things like connecting vowels and the personal endings. So our persons and our numbers are listed here on our chart. We're going to use luo as our paradigm example. The verb luo in Greek means to loose. Okay? And the present stem of luo is lambda upsilon. Okay? That's our present stem. And it's the stem of the verb that gives us the lexical semantics, or the basic meaning of the verb. So, lou has to do with loosing, okay? Pisteuo is I believe, or the verb to believe. Pistou is the stem, and it has to do with the semantics of putting your faith somewhere, okay? We can switch out the stems for other stems and change the kind of action we're talking about, but the rest of the verb, the connecting vowels and the endings, are going to be, characteristic of all verbs in the present active indicative. So let's take a look then at what we have here. We have, first of all, after we have our present stem for our present active indicative tense, we're going to have connecting vowels. There are two possible connecting vowels in the Greek language, omicron or epsilon. But they're going to come between the present stem and the personal ending. All right? There is a rule for when you use which one. And the rule is basically this. You use omicron before mu or nu, and you use the connecting vowel epsilon everywhere else. Okay? Use omicron before a personal ending that begins with a mu or a nu. Use epsilon everywhere else. And so what we're going to do is look at what the real personal endings are in the Greek verbal system for the present active indicative. And then I'm going to point out what happens to those real endings to produce the forms that we see. But it's going to be important to me. Not every Greek professor thinks it's important to know what the real endings are, but it's important to me that you know what the real endings are, because if you do, then the Greek verbal system will actually make some sense to you. There's actual a pattern that the verbal system follows. So let's look at the first person singular personal ending. The first person singular personal ending is, the real ending is me, mu iota. You have learned a verb in Greek that actually uses this in the first person singular. Do you know what it's called or what verb it is? Ami. Exactly. So ami uses the real personal ending. I am, right? Ami. That me is the inflectional ending for I as the subject. Now, what happens in Greek, though, is that most of our verb forms that we're going to be learning are not actually going to use the real ending. Okay? The me will not be added. And what that means is that we're going to be left with the connecting vowel omicron, but no real ending is used. And the resulting form of the connecting vowel with the no ending ends up being an omega. Now, where did this omega come from? It's the connecting vowel omicron that lengthens to compensate for the fact that no personal ending is added or used here. All right? And so, if you look at your chart, that's what we have. Lu, o, mi. The me drops. I'm left with lu, a. And the omicron lengthens to an omega to produce luo. So you could translate luo as I am loosing, if it's a continuous action, or simply I loose. I loose. Either of those is fine. One of the things that I find happening, let me just talk about the semantics of using the present stem here. Many times in Mounce's answer key, he's going to use the progressive form of the verb in the present tense. I am believing. I am loosing. Almost to the point of absurdity. Okay? I don't think that you have to do that all the time. In fact, I would suggest that if your verb is not an action verb, but a stative verb, a verb that indicates a state of being, then using the ing progressive form actually sounds funny in English. Okay? Yes? I think because he's trying to get across the idea that the present frequently does indicate action in process. Okay? But I just think he commits overkill on it. Okay? For example, if I'm in love with somebody and I come to the point of finally expressing that to her, how am I going to say it? Cheryl, I am loving you. That sounds like a McDonald's commercial, right? It's I love you. Stative verbs sound funny when they're made progressive. Okay? And when you make them progressive, then there's usually some sort of an unusual nuance to them. Okay? For example, here's one. I could say, Bertha, she's nice. Okay? Or I could say, Bertha, she's being nice. Now, what does it mean when I take the verb to be and I make it progressive in a sentence like that? She's being nice. Well, there's an implicature here, right? That she's normally not nice, but right now she's being very nice. She's acting nice. Okay? So putting verbs that are stative or linking verbs in the ing progressive form usually does something a little bit funny with the semantics of it. So that's why I would not recommend that you always do it as a matter of course in your translation.
I had a question about that on the homework because he likes to say like they are saying, and so he adds a word in between. You have to like put a word in between they and saying.
Right, right.
Instead of they say.
Yeah, well, if you're going to make something progressive, then in English we have to use a form of to be plus then the ing form of the verb. Okay, and that is okay if the context is appropriate. But I just think that sometimes he uses the ing form when it's not necessary or when it sounds very awkward Okay, so you don't have to do that. All right, let's look at the second person singular form. The second person singular real ending is actually sigma iota here. Okay, sigma iota. So since the omicron, by the way, since the personal ending on the first singular was me, the connecting vowel I'm using is omicron because omicron always comes before mu or nu, but then the me falls off, but the omicron stays but lengthens. Okay, since epsilon is the connecting vowel everywhere else besides mu or nu, starting the personal ending, then I'm going to use the epsilon before the C. Now what ends up happening here is that I'm left with an epsilon before the sigma and an iota after the sigma. And in Greek, there is a phonetic change that happens where intervocalic sigma, isn't that an exciting term? You might want to know this if you're ever on Jeopardy. Intervocalic sigma, a sigma between two vowels, frequently drops out. I like to refer to this as it drops into Sheol or drops into Hades, okay? Wherever it went, it falls out, it drops off, okay? And I'm left with, instead of lu-sc, lu-e, okay? And then a sigma is added at the end, presumably to distinguish the form from the third singular form we're going to see, which would be lue as well. Okay, so it becomes lues. It might be that sigma was attached at the end by analogy from the secondary endings that we're going to learn a little bit later. There's some other second person forms that have a sigma too. All right, so when that happens, I'm going to be left with ace as the end. So lues. So luo, I loose, lues, you loose. And then for the third singular, it's lu-e-t. T is my real ending here. But again, there are some changes that happen to it. Epsilon precedes the T because the personal ending does not begin with mu or nu. What happens here? If you look at the handout, lua-t, the tau before a final iota, so T, this tau becomes a sigma. So lua-t becomes lua-c. This is just a frequent phonetic change that happens in Greek. But now, look, I have a sigma that's intervocalic, don't I? The sigma is between the epsilon and the iota. And so what's going to happen to that intervocalic sigma? It's going to fall into Sheol here. And now I'm going to be left with lu-e, and all of that will combine to form lue. Lue. Okay, so I get a diphthong out of it, the epsilon iota, lue. 2 syllables, right? Remember how we learned about syllables last semester? Lue. So he, she, or it looses or is loosing.
This probably sounds like a dumb question, but I'm not afraid to ask dumb questions. So the noun rules, the rule 7 is the square stops.
The square stops, right?
But this is not the same thing.
Yeah, this is different than that. Yeah. These are just fairly frequent pattern changes that happen in Greek, and so when we come to them, we're going to see this several times. Okay, so I'm introducing them to you. We didn't learn about these last semester, so these are some new consonant changes. Okay, and but we're going to see them frequently. Yeah, it would be nice, right? Well, so here's the good news, right? In some verb forms, they do stay put. Think about a me again. What's the third singular form of a me? What's it look like? It's this one. Right? There's the T ending. Yeah. And sometimes, many times, you'll see it with that movable nu at the end. You'll usually see an end there.
Not just a noun rule.
Yeah.
That's just a Greek rule that the nu is usually movable.
You do see the movable nu with nouns, but we're now going to see it with verbs as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. I'll talk about where in just a minute. Yes.
I understand what happens with the tau and the sigma here, but going back to the first singular, is there a pattern
There was actually, so there's basically two conjugation patterns that that we find in Greek. We have what are called the me patterns, which are here, and then there was the omega pattern, where the me patterns were phasing out and being replaced by an omega pattern. And there's some verbs where they occur both with me forms and non-me forms. Okay, but by this stage in Koine Greek, me forms were slowly phasing out. Yeah, and this is just it's a symptom of language change over time. We in English, believe it or not, we used to have a case system for our nouns, and we don't anymore. Okay, what happened? Well, praise God, it fell into Sheol, right? Of course, the case system can also be very useful. So that's why I say it's sort of a blessing and a curse. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is true. It is true. Okay, so the first person plural form is going to be, the stem lu plus the connecting vowel omicron followed by the personal ending men. Men starts with a mu, and therefore the connecting vowel is omicron. Okay, now here, thank the Lord, there are no sound changes that happen. The men stays put, and so the ending of the form is amen, and amen and amen. So, luamen, no changes. So we loose, or we are loosing. And the same thing with the second person plural. The real personal ending is te. There's no reason that the epsilon can't come before it, and it stay there, so we're happy, and so we're left with ete for the end of the verb form. So lu ete is our actual form. So y'all, you plural, are loosing, or y'all loose. And then the last form is nt for our personal ending. Look at that. Nt. That's the real ending. Now that starts with a nu. So what must my connecting vowel be? It's got to be an omicron. All right. And by the way, the connecting vowel is sometimes referred to as the thematic vowel or the theme vowel. So I'll use those interchangeably, but connecting vowel is also what I normally use for that vowel that connects the stem to the personal ending. Now, you learn that if you have a final tau iota at the end of the word, what will that tau do? It's going to change to a sigma, okay? And then we learn something about consonants before sigmas, and this gets back to our square of stops. What happens to dentals before a sigma? If I have a dental plus a sigma, what happens? It's just left with the sigma. That is, the dental falls out, right? Remember, dental means teeth, and teeth fall out when you don't take care of them, right? So dentals before sigma fall out. Well, what were the dental consonants that we learned? You remember your dentals? Okay, good. So tau. What else? Delta and theta. Okay? Well, guess what? There's another dental that's not in your square of stops chart. Nu. Nu is dental too, isn't it? That's exactly right. So play along with me here, okay? Everybody make the T sound with your mouth. T, t, t. Where's your tongue? It's up at the top, right at the back of the front teeth, right? T, 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 t. Now everybody do the D sound. D, 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 d. Now do the N sound. N, n, n. Is your tongue in the same place in all three of those? Yes. So nu is a dental, but it's a nasal dental. You are not only placing your tongue here, but you're forcing all the air out of the nasal cavity. There shouldn't be any air coming out of your mouth when you do And if you don't believe me, plug your nose in the middle of saying Go ahead, do it now. You're amazingly quiet. Right? Nasals force air out of the nasal passage. Okay, whereas most consonants come out, the airflow is coming out of the oral cavity. So what's going on here is I do have, when a nu precedes a sigma, the nu is a dental, it's going to fall out before the sigma as well. All right?
Do the dental in
So now they will also happen for verbs too. So dentals before sigma fall out. Okay.
Only dental or the rest of it?
Well, we're going to find some other situations where there's some difficulties with sigma, but for now, just let's focus on the dentals here. So what do I have? For my form for third person plural, it's the stem lu, okay, and then the omicron and nti. Can you say nti? Nti? It's a little bit difficult, isn't it? Okay. Now that tau before that iota becomes sigma, so lu a si, and then the nu is going to drop out. So I'm left with lu a si. So the nu's gone. That was right here. Lu a si. Now what happens? How do we get the form that we have, which is lu u si? What happens is this omicron, is that a long or a short O here? It's short. But the loss of the nu causes the short omicron to lengthen compensatorily. It lengthens to compensate for the loss of the consonant, okay, for the loss of the nu. And what the omicron lengthens to is an omicron upsilon diphthong. Remember, diphthongs are long, aren't they? Diphthongs are long. So omicron becomes omicron upsilon. A becomes u. So it becomes lu u si. Lu u si. And that's they are loosing, or they loose. So those are the forms. Let me then have you repeat after me, and we'll read over these forms together. All right, everybody. Luo, I loose. Lues, you loose. Lue, he, she, or it looses. Luamen, we loose. Luete, y'all loose. And luusin is they loose. Notice that I have parentheses around this nu right here. See that nu? There's parentheses. What does that mean? It means that the presence of the nu is optional. That is to say, it's a movable nu. It's a nu that could be there. It's a nu that might not be there. If you see it there, does that change your translation value? No. All it is an orthographic addition. It's just a matter of the writing, but it has nothing to do with the meaning. Okay? When do you see it? Well, it's placed there to break up a sequence of vowel at the end of the word, followed by a vowel at the beginning of the next word. So if I had something like, aner, which means man, or actually I guess it would have to be plural, but whatever the case, luusi, aner, I'm going to expect to see a movable nu in here to break up the sequence of two vowels together. Okay? Now, it is the case that in a great many situations, you may even have a movable nu even when there is no vowel following the verb, but you will see it if there is a vowel for sure. All right, so that movable nu is not a personal ending nu. This is what I really want to stress. The personal ending is not nu here. Okay. All right, and that's going to make a difference for us a little bit later. Now, in terms of our chart, and this is a matter of memory work now, what I want to ask you to do is to memorize not just these forms of luo in the present active indicative, luo, lues, lue, lumen, luete, lusin, but I want you to memorize the personal endings this way. I want you to memorize them in terms of what you see on the actual forms as given, but in parentheses for 4 of these forms, I want you to put in parentheses the real ending so that you know what they are. When we get to me verbs, then you'll already know them, okay? But also when we look at the rest of the verbal endings, you're going to see the pattern that I'm wanting you to see. Me, ct, mente, and nt, okay? These real endings all have iotas at the end. A mu, sigma tau, and a nu tau, followed by iota. All right. Let me draw your attention to the chart over here, master personal ending chart. What you have and what we've just completed is the first quadrant of the personal endings master chart. You're going to be committing this whole chart to memory, so what we've covered is just 1/4 of it so far. I want you to look at how the chart is laid out. Okay? If you're reading the chart from left to right, the top row, okay, so going sideways here, is giving us active voice. We're going to fill in the second chart here when we get to chapter 21, I believe. But these are broken up between primary and secondary tenses. Okay, primary tenses are the tenses that are not past. All right? Secondary tenses are the past time tenses. And they use something called an augment. It's a little prefix added to the verb form to indicate that it's a past time verb. So we're not going to meet any augments for several more chapters. But the primary tenses are non-past tenses, and the present tense, therefore, is a primary tense, and it's going to use these personal endings. Now, what's important for us to know is that if we can really get our minds around and memorize these personal endings for the primary tenses in the active voice, then we have memorized the personal endings in the other primary tenses that are active. Okay? And when we get to the next set, we're going to be looking at the middle passive voice forms. When we learn these for the primary tense, the present tense, which is our first primary tense, then we will also have learned them for the future and for the perfect tenses when they're middle or passive. So once we learn the endings, we're going to know them for all the tenses, okay? So I'm trying to avoid you getting sick with memorizing 1,000 paradigms in your first year grammar class. Okay, we learn the endings, then we can parse pretty much any verb form. Yes.
Primary tenses.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about the nothing, sigma, iota, or the NC, just the in parentheses plus the mente.
Now I want you to memorize all of that. So memorize that the ending is usually no ending, okay, but the real ending was me. Because what you're seeing is the sigma at the end. So memorize the sigma because that's what you normally see, but in parentheses, it's really sigma iota that has been modified. Okay, so memorize what's in this box exactly the way I have it written for you. Okay?
So Mounce
Plus the real ending. Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. Not the resultant endings, because the resultant thing is the connecting vowel plus the endings. I don't really want you to focus on the connecting vowel as much as on the ending, because a little bit later our connecting vowels are going to change, or there won't be a connecting vowel at all. Okay, so don't focus on the connecting vowel. It's the endings, the personal endings that you really need to know. Okay, great. Mounce on page 135 in 16.3 and 16.4, he talks about the matter of aspect and time. Okay, and in terms of aspect, what he points out is that the choice to use the present tense with that present tense stem is that we're conveying the action as being continuous, or as he describes it as undefined. I think I would just simply say it's either continuous or habitual, repetitive, or things that are proverbially true. I could say something like, God is good, for example, right? And I'm going to use the present tense for that, something that's always the case. All right. He also mentions that in terms of time, the timing of the verbal action is present or contemporaneous with the time of speaking. Okay. Now, in 16.15, oops, I said 3 and 4. That's really 13 and 14. So 16.15 we're introduced to the concepts of personal pronouns in the nominative case. Now, because our verbs mark the doer or the subject, the agent of the action, pronouns are optional, right? They're not necessary semantically in order to know who's performing the action. So when an actual pronoun is used, it's because the writer is wanting in some way to draw attention to the subject. A lot of people like to call that emphasis. It doesn't really have to be emphasis like you're shouting the subject if there's an overt, subject pronoun being used. It may be a point of contrast. Moses likes peanut butter, but I like chocolate. What I do, I would use ego with my verb, wouldn't I? Because I'm drawing a contrast between the subjects of both of those verbs. So there is a kind of emphasis or prominence that's being given to the subject pronoun when the overt pronoun is used because it's semantically unnecessary. The other matter here is the issue of gender. Do our personal pronouns mark gender? Well, yes and no, right? Which ones don't mark gender? The first and second persons don't mark gender, okay? And our personal endings don't mark gender at all, do they? You don't know what gender the third singular is, okay? Unless you know the context. So the verb forms themselves don't mark gender. The pronouns that could be used most of the time don't mark gender. But which ones do mark gender? Yeah, he, she, it, and they, right? So the third person pronouns mark gender. And he points out very interesting situation where you could have a verb form or a sentence like this. I'll jot it down here. Aute. We want to make that the right accent, grav. And then leges. So look at the form leges real quickly. What is the person and number of that present active indicative verb form? Leges. That's you, so this is second singular. Great. Now, aute. You have typically thought of aute as a form of autos, and autos is the third person pronoun, right? And that third person pronoun would be translated as he, she, or it, right? Now, would that make sense to view aute as she? Is that aute she? Yeah, the verb is second person, right? So if aute were truly the subject pronoun she, what form of the verb would it have to be? It'd have to be third singular. It'd have to be aute lege, right? Okay, so what this is telling us is that this is not technically the actual pronoun autos. This is one of those adjectival forms of autos. Remember we learned adjectival intensive and identical adjective uses for autos. And this is really being used in tandem with an understood su that is not there. You yourself say, where the adjectival form of autos is there to tell you the gender of the you. Okay? It's giving you a bit more grammatical information. Okay, so be very careful here, because you might see forms of autos marking the gender of the subject, but it's not truly the personal pronoun use of autos. Okay, it's one of those adjectival uses. It'd be something like you yourself say or are saying. Okay? All right. If you flip the page to 136, we're introduced to the master verb chart. The master verb chart. And I do want you to start memorizing the master verb chart here. Look at the columns. We're going to be building rows, so what will go under the present active later will be the present middle passive. Okay? But there's several columns. The first one, aug/redupe, means augment or reduplication, and the present active indicative is not characterized by any augments or reduplication, so that's going to be blank. The tense stem that is used is the present tense stem. The tense formative, tense form, it means tense formative. There are no tense formatives associated with this tense, so that's going to be blank. Our connecting vowels are omicron and epsilon, so you'll put omicron/epsilon, and the personal endings are the primary active endings. That is to say, in our master personal endings chart, it's the endings in the top left quadrant. And then the last column is the first person singular paradigm form. So in this case, we're going to use luo for almost all of these. So it's a form of luo. Okay, and we're just going to keep adding rows to our master chart as we learn new tenses in Greek. And what I'm hoping you'll do is, if you can remember what's in the master verb chart, it will prevent you from having to learn lots of needless paradigms. Because if you know the personal endings, and if you know whether there's supposed to be an augment or not, which personal endings it uses, then you can reconstruct any verb's paradigm by knowing what the movable parts are. Okay. All right. Let's read the vocab words together, and then we'll look at your homework. Okay. So page 137 at the top, we have akuo. Akuo. So I hear, learn, obey, or understand. Now there are some forms that are given in the vocab list after the English translation. You do not know what all these forms mean, and that's okay. We'll explain what they are as we go on. They're going to be different forms and different tenses. What's important to note here is that akuo can take a direct object in one of two cases, the genitive case or the accusative case. So don't be surprised if you see the object in the genitive case. You're expecting accusative. You'll see it the other way too. Blepo, so I see or look at. Echo, I have or hold. Luo, so I loose, untie, or destroy. Namas, so this is not a verb. This is not a verb, which is why you don't have these principal parts of the verb, because it's not a verb like you do with these other forms we just looked at. This is just a noun. What gender is this noun? It's masculine. How do you know it's masculine? The article is ha. Okay? Remember, when we have nouns, we're given the gender by an article, a single article. What is the u telling you here after namas? The genitive singular. So can you surmise what declension pattern namas follows by looking at this genitive case ending? It's just second declension, right? It's just second declension. That's right. Okay, good. Hapu is where. Oh, by the way, namas is law principle. So hapu is where. Pisteuo. Pisteuo. So eu is a diphthong. Eu. So pisteuo. Pisteuo, I believe, have faith or trust. So the present stem is pisteu. It's the part of the verb that you have when you drop any personal endings and connecting vowels. You're left with the stem. And in pisteuo, pisteu is the present stem. The lexical form of our verbs use the present stem. Next, prosopon. So face or appearance. What gender is this one? Neuter. Good. And what declension pattern does it follow? It's the second declension. Yes. Tate. So it's then, thereafter. Prosopon was face, appearance. Tuflas. And then tufle. and tuflan. Ha, there are 3 forms of this word in our vocabulary section. What does that tell you about the kind of word it is? It is an adjective. How many terminations does this adjective have? 3, 1 for every gender. If it only had 2, we would call that a 2-termination adjective. It would have 1 form for which genders? Masculine and feminine, and the second form would be for the neuter. And we don't have any 2-termination adjectives in our list today, but we will come across some more soon. So tuflas is blind, the adjective blind. And then hara. Hara, joy or delight. Think, hip, hip, hurrah! Okay, that's what you would say if you had a lot of joy or a lot of delight.
Toothless means blind, so he's toothless.
Toothless.
He keeps running into things.
Oh, right. Oh, there you go. Nice. Nice. All right, very good. So hara is a noun. What gender? Feminine. And what declension pattern does it follow? The first declension. Terrific.